Well, hello, Bright Talk community. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Paul Kirch. I am the CEO of a company called Actus Sales Intelligence, where we help you sell smarter. I work with small, mid-sized organizations as well as a lot of entrepreneurs, but I've also been a certified sales instructor working with some large Fortune 500 companies and some of the largest companies out there in business. So I've got a broad breadth of experience, but today I'm going to be talking really from the perspective of sales strategy and how you focus on getting the right strategy in place for your business. So hopefully you take away some good nuggets from this, and at the end you'll have my contact information, so you're welcome to follow up with any questions you have. So we went out and asked a bunch of business owners, business leaders and business owners, what they wish they had more in their business. And we got some of the typical answers you would expect. Of course, things like more time. That's, of course, a wish that I can't fulfill. We can add some efficiencies, but we can't get more time. The other thing that came up was more freedom and flexibility. But everyone, without question, had said, they need more sales. They need more revenue, more money. Now, obviously, if you're in business, more sales, more revenue represents the opportunity to grow. Now, if you can't take on more work right now because you don't have enough staff, that's one thing. But no matter what, more revenue provides you the opportunity to grow in ways that you can't otherwise. So often, sales, though, in business, it feels like a roller coaster ride. Now, I work with a lot of companies that when they're busy, they are not investing in sales because they're kind of riding high on that moment. And then when things get slow and they get stressed out, all of a sudden they are kind of burying their heads in the sand and they are freezing their spending and they're not investing in sales. So they go through this roller coaster ride where they're like, yeah, we know we need to do it. We know we have to work on this, but it's not something that's a priority right now. And unfortunately, this roller coaster ride often does not stop unless you step away and look at things from a different perspective. Now, another thing that came up a lot when we asked these business owners and business leaders what they needed was an exit strategy. They want to get their business to a point where they have a means of exiting. Now, that may be a sale of the business. It may be turning it over to someone else, but some way that they can retire or step away from that business and get some equitable benefit out of it. Now, if you're in a business that does not have a lot of tangible assets, or you're in a business where you're trading time for money, that's a hard place to be. So you need to be thinking about an exit strategy. But to be fair and honest, one of the greatest exit strategies out there is to generate more sales and more revenue and increase your bottom line and give yourself an opportunity to build a solid platform. So, as I said, my name is Paul Kirch, and President and CEO of Actus Sales Intelligence. I also host it was a live radio show. Now it's a podcast called Boss Academy Radio, where BOSS stands for Business Ownership Success Strategies. So we help business owners gain a lot of insights and strategies on how to grow their business. So hopefully you're going to take away some great gems today. And my company's been around since 2009, but I've been in my professional career since about the year 1990, and I spent 10 years at the famous Gallup organization, where I learned the operations side of the marketing research industry before moving into sales and then later sales leadership. And so I've had a great run, and I've gained a lot of experience that's put me in the position I am today. So today we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the strategy you're using. What's that company structure you have? What's the management situation over your sales, and who's managing them? How are they being leveraged, and what's the opportunity for growth there? And then some team development strategies. And so we're going to spend the next 40 minutes just kind of talking through these. So when we think about strategy, a sales strategy is going to focus your efforts on the most important customers. A sales strategy should not just be a blanket concept. You really should think about, who are my key customers? Who are the people that are making us money today? Where are we having the biggest opportunity? And how do we get more of those people? And I say that not because I don't want you going after more business. Of course I do. But the problem is, sometimes you get in a situation where you're going out and casting this wide net, hoping to get business from anyone and everyone that'll do business with you, instead of finding those people that are really going to be your ideal customers. They're going to be loyal to you. They're going to understand your brand, and they're going to be out there being your champion, spreading the word. So whether these are your existing potential customers or key customers, or ones that you hope to gain at some point, that's where you need to be focusing. So some steps that we use to help define strategy. First of all, you need to define that ideal customer. And if you're somebody that has marketing experience, or you've attended any online marketing seminars, you know that there's this concept of an avatar, and that's the idea of taking your ideal customer and identifying who they are. What kind of car do they drive? How do they live? So if you're B2B or B2C, I don't care. Identify who your ideal buyer is and see if you can get to know them intimately. Got a little lag here, so I apologize. But then the other thing is your unique selling propositions. What are you really differentiated by? How do you stand out in the marketplace? Now, a lot of people say, well, we do X, Y, and Z, and that's why we're different. But they haven't really put a lot of thought or effort into it. And those are probably the same things that their competitors are saying. So take time to really identify your unique selling propositions. And at the end, you're going to have my contact information. If you want some insights on this particular piece, feel free to reach out. So analyzing your sales territory. Now, if you're a solopreneur or a small business, that's one thing. But if you're a larger organization and you've got multiple territories, those may be geographic, they may be industry related, identify those key opportunities within those territories. Analyze the metrics of your salespeople. Look at the opportunities that exist that maybe you're not getting business from. But then another important piece is identifying and knowing your competitors. Now, the reason you do this by territory or by rep is because every rep's performance may be different. And a lot of times the assumption is that one rep is performing really well and another one is kind of performing mediocre. The assumption is that mediocre rep may not be as good a salesperson. That's a very dangerous assumption unless you've really analyzed the data and gotten to know what is making that territory successful for that other person. Because there could be some other parameters at play. There could be a larger competitor they're facing. There could be a lot of different issues. So don't just make that assumption. And I always encourage people to really get to know their competitors, not just by name. Know their business. Do some competitive intel. See if you can do some competitive pricing. Find out what makes them tick and why they're successful or why you have an opportunity to shine above them. Because unfortunately, in this day and age, we deal with a lot of cluttered messages. A lot of the messages are Me Too marketing messages where we're saying the same thing our competitors are. And the reason it's more of an issue today is because we're surrounded by more opportunities to be distracted by our telephones, by our email, by Facebook. And so messages start to blend in, and a lot of times we're confusing our clients, and they're not necessarily distinguishing who we are versus our competitors. And then the fifth one is, and a lot of companies do this fairly well, but they may not do it as well as they think they do, financial projections. What are your goals? What are the targets? What margins are you operating on with your product lines? That's one that really is an issue where a lot of companies don't have a clear idea of what kind of margins they operate under. If you've got 30% margins that you gain for every sale, and you can increase that to 40%, you make a huge impact on your bottom line, and that's without really increasing sales. So some tools that you can use to get clear on your direction. I love developing client stories. And this is going to be one that may seem very clear, but I'm going to make it a little bit cloudy because I think there's an opportunity here to change your way of thinking. What is the sales journey like for your buyer? Not what you think internally, because a lot of times we think, oh, our clients love us, they keep coming back. When truth be told, they may be marginally dissatisfied with working with you, but they think you're better than the alternative of going out and finding something else. And then all of a sudden, someone else comes along with a better presentation, a better message, and you've lost that business, and you didn't even know that it was up for being lost. So just be careful. Get to know your client's perspective on working with you. You can ask them. You can find lapsed customers and ask them what the experience was like. And a lot of times you'll find that there's frustrations that you don't know exist because they don't tell you, because there's a difference between being a loyal customer and being a satisfied customer. I can be satisfied going to Target. I can be satisfied going to the Walmart across the street, but I'm not necessarily loyal to either brand. You want to get customers that are loyal to you. And then, of course, SWOT analysis. If you're familiar with SWOT analysis, they're great. You look at the strengths of your business. What are the weaknesses? What are the real opportunities? And then what are the threats? And really dig in and get a perspective that's more than just one-dimensional. I don't want one person's perspective on a SWOT analysis. I want to understand from multiple angles what are the real strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within an organization. That will take you a long way towards identifying how you can position yourself better. Now, some people argue about measuring KPIs, key performance indicators. But KPIs and metrics matter, especially in the sales side of things. You may be in a business that operates off of proposals and those types of transactions. So if you know that a certain number of proposals are going to close at, let's say your proposals are closing at 20% rate, every 20 proposals you're getting a win out of, well, then you need to know how many calls, how many meetings, how many efforts it's going to take to get another proposal in. And what if you can do something to increase your close rate on your proposals? So knowing those kind of indicators goes a long way towards putting you in a position of a better strategy. Now, I love the argument about marketing versus sales because a lot of organizations see them as such polar opposite areas, when really there's a lot of synergy, and there should be synergy. And marketing people tend to be very creative, and they tend to be very focused on the concepts they're putting out. But when we look at marketing by definition, this is from Merriam-Webster.com, the act or process of selling or purchasing in a market. The process or technique promoting, selling, and distributing a product or service, an aggregate of functions involved in moving goods from producer to consumer. I'm sorry, but everything on that list is essentially a sales process. Now, marketing and sales do have different roles, but they should work more closely together. You don't want to operate in silos. In fact, you want a lot of synergy in those areas. But there are some differences. So marketing really is focused on a team to many. So if you've got one person in your marketing team, that's one thing. But if you've got 4 or 5 people on your marketing team, their goal is to go out and reach as many people with their message as possible, their different initiatives. Now on the sales side, it's really focused on a one-to-one relationship. Now this does not include like the idea of doing mass lead generation, but that's really as much of a marketing function as anything. Salespeople are working with one client at a time, one prospect at a time, trying to convert them into a client. In marketing, missed opportunities, missed connections, they're basically an oops for the marketing team. It's like, oh, it didn't really work, didn't resonate. But in sales, you miss an opportunity, miss a connection, it represents a loss of revenue opportunity. Marketing focuses on awareness as a primary objective. So everything marketing does, there's some argument that there's other areas that they leverage that doesn't focus so much on awareness, but awareness is such a critical piece of marketing. Your message keeps your company top of mind with buyers and prospects. In sales, top of mind awareness is critical, but it's a secondary objective because you're more focused on that relationship instead of just focused on staying top of mind. Now, if you're not getting anywhere with a prospect or client, of course, top of mind awareness is your next best avenue. And marketing's true focus, it's really about lead generating and then lead nurturing. At the end of the day, everything marketing does, hopefully, is generating opportunities for your company, or at least it's generating the opportunity for you to be seen in the marketplace in a great light, which drives people to you. But in sales should be focused on converting those leads to sales. Now, I bring all this up because I want to make sure that we understand the distinction between marketing and sales, but how they actually work together. And I really want your sales and marketing aligned to fit the customer's buying process. So we go back to that client story. How are they buying from you? What's the journey like for them? And how do you make that better? In marketing, if you're a marketing person, listen to this. I mean no offense to this, but your job is to help support sales. It's a critical component because without sales, there are no opportunities to do business. Now, there's some people that argue it's like, well, without our products and services, we wouldn't have a need for sales. But look, at the end of the day, more sales generates more revenue, generates more opportunities. And trailblazing and testing new opportunities and messaging for marketing, it's a critical piece. I mean, that's one of the best parts about being in marketing, being able to support that, is you get to do the fun things of creating. But what happens when you create a new message, a new concept, and nobody on the sales team is on board with it? So one of the things I'm a big fan of is getting people on board with a message, training them, do some role playing, and make sure they're comfortable with it. Because if what's going to happen is salespeople are going to go out there in the marketplace, they're going to revert back to old messaging very quickly because it's comfortable for them. So you want to be sure and leverage that, train them, and help them just stay on board and make sure that message is resonating. So your sales strategy, I mean, look, strategy is made up of marketing and sales strategy combined, and it really does come down to an opportunity for these two areas to be so closely aligned and create some real synergy and create a message that's powerful. So strategy is your plan to reach your intended outcome. You know, the what, the who, the when, the where, the why. And without a clear strategy, the things that are the doing, the tactics, sometimes you're doing them for the sake of doing because you don't know your outcomes. And I see this happen in so many organizations where they've got people doing tasks, going down avenues, but they've never really taken time to measure what is that impacting, where are we actually going, and what's our outcome, what's the end goal here. But remember, strategy, it's only part of your planning. So don't lose sight of the other components of sales planning. And we're not going to talk a lot about sales planning today, but feel free to reach out to me, and I can send you a PDF on some sales planning strategies. So what about structure? Now, depending on the size of your organization, some of this is not going to be as relevant to you. So, I apologize, but I did want to go over structure because it is an important piece. Now, a lot of times companies have developed goals and they've defined their strategy, but they have no real clear team structure. Let's build a team to support these. Come down to that chicken and egg argument. Which one comes first? I really think you need to have clear direction, strategy, and then build a team to support that. But a lot of times that's not possible. This is a very, very sexy, very attractive sales team structure. You got your VP of marketing, your VP of sales, you've got your salespeople underneath there, sales managers, and then you've got lead people to support all these efforts. I mean, that is a powerful, powerful example of what a sales organization should and could look like. But depending on your size and depending on where you are, a lot of times you have this. You've got a sales rep, maybe a handful of reps, and you've said, okay, you know what? We can't afford a sales manager, so we're gonna take Bob, who runs operations, and they're gonna report to him. But I'm gonna also have them report to me as CEO. This puts the salesperson in a position where they don't know where to go to, for one thing. They're not getting clear direction. They're not getting the kind of support they need. And quite frankly, you see a lack of performance under this type of environment. And I've seen this on many occasions on a smaller organization. You have a sales rep reporting to somebody who's been there a little bit longer. You know what? Bob's been on board longer than Tony, so we're going to have Tony report to Bob. That's just the way it's going to be. Well, Bob doesn't want to be a manager. He's a horrible manager. His job is to go out and sell. He doesn't want to deal with it. So you've got Tony floundering. And then people wonder why Tony is struggling to reach his numbers. Or he's doing well on his sales, but he's frustrated because the culture and the environment is not one where he feels appreciated. Or you have a small organization where the sales rep really doesn't have anybody he clearly reports to. You know, he's talking to the CEO, he's talking to the market people, but he doesn't necessarily have a clear manager. And I think this is a very dangerous place to be. I think sales must be managed. And it's not because I want micromanagement. I hate micromanagement. If I have to micromanage people, now in certain environments it's necessary, but if I have to micromanage people, they're probably not going to work for me. I want people that are self-sufficient and that are can go out and do, and they know what to do, but when they need leadership, when they need direction, when they need support, I need to be able to provide that. So without sales management, there is no clear direction on your sales. Now, determining your structure, know where you're going from where you are right now. Where are you going? What's the clear direction? So some of the things that I look for when I'm determining how that structure should look, what are the revenue targets? You know, do we have enough salespeople to support the targets that you've got in place? So know those margins. Do you know those things? So what are the margins on your products and services? If you don't know the margins, then it's hard to make a clear determination. Well, what's your current sales team look like? And do we have the right people in place? And are we making determinations on the right people based off of clear information? Like I said earlier, one rep may be underperforming, whereas another rep may be really succeeding. But is it the rep, or is there some other factor at play? Who's managing them? What's their management style? And how are you really guiding the process? And then do we have the right budgets in place? Do we have our people out there traveling? Are we doing things on a limited budget? And if so, we have to make clear expectations on that first point of revenue targets. And how are we supporting sales? Do we have lead generation people on staff? Are we purchasing leads? Is marketing driving leads? Are the salespeople responsible for finding their own leads? All of these things come back to that first point, and they make a big impact on that number. How are we training them? A lot of times people feel that training has to happen from within, but let's be fair. Not every sales manager is a good trainer. And often having a perspective from the outside adds so much value to your organization, because we're bogged down by the minutia of doing the work every day internally. But an external person can come in with a clear objective. What's the market potential? Do we really know what the market potential is? A lot of times we set a revenue target that's not feasible because there's just not enough business to be had. Or there's enough business to be had, but we've got a strong competitive landscape out there that we have to go up against. So we need to be fair about the market potential. So when it comes to your team, like I said, who's going to manage? I don't want that to be a major sticking point for everything I say, but to be honest with you, sales has to have some sort of management. And can that person train? I think it's dangerous to put somebody in a position of leading a sales team that has not been in sales themselves or does not have a strong sales track record. And because simply salespeople face challenges that other people in organizations don't. They face more rejection. They really face a lot of challenges. A lot of times organizations don't treat the salespeople the same way that they treat others because salespeople are seen as the guys that are always out there bringing in the business, and then other people have to find a way to fulfill it. But that's not always seen in a positive light. Let's work together as a team and get everyone on board. But get a sales manager who has sales experience. How many reps are they going to manage? Leads, of course, that's a critical piece today. And bidding and proposals. If you work in a business where there's bidding and proposals that are critical to your success, are the salespeople doing these themselves? Do you have somebody who helps support them? You know, a lot of organizations that have people that can support the bidding process, they free their salespeople up to go out and generate more business. So often it's an opportunity cost to hire someone to help support that. And then inside sales. Do we have an inside sales team that's helping support the outside sales team? That could be your lead generation. That's people that are following up with those slow to respond clients and things of that nature. So just making sure we've got support for the sales team. But I think the big question, hopefully, if you're listening to this, you are fully committed to your sales process. But there are organizations out there that know they need sales. They want to see their sales team grow, but they're not fully committed to supporting that. And that's a dangerous place to be. You've got to get fully committed. So what about the sales management process? The who, the how, the why. Who's managing this? How are they doing it? But more importantly, why are they doing it? And why do you have this person in that place? So let's look at that. Now, I said earlier, sales must be managed, and I know I sound like a broken record, but it's a critical piece today. Without it, it is such a dangerous place. Now, if you're a solopreneur and all the sales are on you, then you got to find a way to manage yourself, and you can use CRM systems and other things to keep yourself organized. But you need to make sure that sales always stays a priority. So maybe you can create a system to make sure that you're blocking out time to always be selling and always be focusing on business growth. So I love this slide that came from GaryRussian.com. So he talks about internal causes of business distress and external reasons for distress. But there's one piece missing from that. And that comes back to coaching. If your sales manager is not a good trainer, a good coach, but he's a good leader, find a way of getting your team coaching support. Now, this does not mean that sales training is going to solve all your problems, but it does a couple of things. Somebody that comes in and does good sales training, good coaching, allows your people to feel like the company is really supporting them. And it reminds them often of the things that they know they should be doing that they currently aren't. Because people fall into patterns. It doesn't matter what role you're in. It doesn't matter how great a salesperson you are. A lot of times you fall into patterns. And when business is good especially, those patterns really prevent you from getting the kind of experience and leverage you need. So when business is tough, you need to go out and really work hard to get that business in the door. So coaching keeps that stuff top of mind. It also creates some accountability. And look, if you've got the wrong sales manager in place, or this person can't coach and lead, maybe it's time for a change in management, or maybe it's a change in approach. But you need to get the right people to support your growth. And sales relies upon strong management as much, if not more, than other people in the organization, especially if you're an organization that's not sales-focused. If you're operations-focused, I guarantee you have salespeople that feel like outsiders at times. I've been in those organizations, I've managed those organizations, and I know what it's like to be a salesperson who feels like they're on the outside. So that is a very dangerous place where you need somebody to be fully motivated in a sales role. But sales needs management because they need development. You need to continually be helping your people grow. The best salespeople out there can fall into patterns quickly and get very comfortable. And that doesn't mean they're growing. It means they're maybe performing at a really good level, but I guarantee you that if you develop them, they'll even do more for you. Motivation and accountability. That's so critical. One of the things I love doing is, now salespeople sometimes they're cowboys, they're out there doing their own thing. They don't want people managing them. They don't want to deal with this. But it's still a critical piece. So a lot of organizations I work with, I'll set up accountability teams where I'll have maybe people pair up and be accountability buddies and focus on keeping each other motivated, keep each other accountable towards their sales goals, and it really works. But motivating your salespeople and giving them the autonomy or the ability to motivate themselves is critical. Now, I encourage people to, when they've got faced rejection or faced a challenge, get up and take a break. Go for a walk. Get your head clear and come back and go strong. But a lot of organizations, they don't feel like they can do that. They feel like they're constantly being watched. They feel like they're getting scrutinized. Let them have that moment of peace to get back on track. And look, sales plans need to be living documents. They don't need to be conceptual. Now, every organization I've ever worked or every organization I've supported, I've encouraged having the salespeople create even their own simple sales plan that they leverage and continue to reference and make sure that it's ever changing, because sales plans should not be conceptual. You want them to be something that actually works. And I said earlier that sales experience is so critical in the sales process, especially with management. If they can't relate to the person on the other end that they're talking to, if they can't relate to their stress, their challenges, you're going to create an environment where that salesperson is going to feel like they're not appreciated, not understood. It's going to affect performance at some point. So it is important that managers must be able to relate. Without management, there's growth limitations. You can only grow so far on your own. You can only read so many books. You can only watch so many videos and go out and do so many sales calls. You need to be focusing on growth. And that growth can come from training, but it can also come from pushing someone with a little bit steeper goals, or understanding that maybe there's a time to pull back because the goals are maybe a little bit too lofty and somebody's going through something on a personal level. Without management, you put people in a position where they set themselves up for failure quickly. Conflict resolution. Look, sales versus operations, there's going to be conflict. Operations has to fulfill something you sold. Often that creates hard feelings. Salesperson feels like they did the right thing. Operations feels like that you didn't. And it creates a situation where without good management, good leadership, you're going to have conflict. You need somebody analyzing those metrics and saying, look, we're 20% of where we need to be. And we think we need some more meeting opportunities to get there. Here's what we need. Here's where we need to go, because here's where our numbers are right now. Looking at forecasting, looking at things from previous years to determine where you are today and where you're going. And can those revenue targets actually be met? And the sooner you know it, the better you can make adjustments. It does give sales a seat at the table, especially in an organization that has several layers. You want sales represented by somebody who's a strong leader at that leadership table. Hiring mistakes. Hiring mistakes cost organizations a lot of money on the sales side. Other parts of your business can absorb that cost a lot easier. But a sales person that does not work out can literally cost you $250,000 on up, depending on what you're paying them, what the opportunity costs are. the dollar ticket value of what they're selling. So hiring mistakes can be a critical, costly mistake for a company. And if you've got somebody that's been in the trenches, knows what it's like to be that salesperson facing rejection, knows what it's like to be on the road for 6 days straight, sleeping out of hotels, and not getting a lot of sleep on the road, then you've got a mutual respect situation for your salespeople and your manager, and that is a critical piece. And then leaders lead. I always am that guy who, if I've got people that I'm leading, I want them to know that I've either done what I'm asking them to do or I'm willing to do what I'm asking them to do, because those things are critical when it comes down to it. And I mentioned outsiders. Management, I think, has to happen internally, but you can have consultative support. You can have sales support from the outside that can help support that process. So when you're looking at your sales manager, who is in place now, if you are a sales manager, be fair to yourself. But let's go through and look at some of the characteristics we think are critical to successful sales management. You want somebody who's experienced in sales. That's without question. I think a sales manager tends to be a little more analytical, or at least they have the tools that allow them to be analytical. They need to be able to measure those metrics and look at ways to do it. Now, that doesn't mean they have to set up the systems and processes on their own. But if you've got, say, Salesforce.com in your company and you hire a consultant, create the right reports that allows that sales manager to really measure performance and make the right decisions to help you grow your company. Focus on the outcomes first. I think that is really critical, is that we look at outcomes. A lot of times we get bogged down on the doing, the tactics and things like that. What's the ultimate outcome we're looking for? I want somebody who's big picture oriented and somebody who really sees that, hey, here's our revenue targets. Here's how we're going to get there. This is what's critical. And they need to know how to lead those salespeople. I said they need to be experienced salespeople, but that doesn't make them good leaders. A lot of salespeople that get promoted into sales management end up being horrible leaders because they don't want to do it, or they've never had to do it. You want somebody who actually has leadership ability. And I think empathy is a huge, huge asset in today's sales world. The old days of always be closing, that aggressive sales approach, in most industries, most organizations, it doesn't work the way that it once did. You need to be more consultative. But empathy is a critical piece. I want to be able to put myself in the shoes of that person on the other side of the table, that client, that prospect. But if I'm a manager, I want to do that same thing with my people. But I also want to be very aware. I want to be aware of what's happening, what's their personality, because I don't want somebody pulling the wool over my eyes. I don't want to be in a situation where the rug is getting pulled out from underneath me. I want to be empathetic, but aware. And then willing to stand up for their people, their team, and willing to stand up to them when it's necessary. But you want somebody who's actually going to stand up for your people. Negotiation skills are critical as a sales manager. I think strong salespeople tend to have a lot of characteristics of strong negotiators, but not all. Those can be learned. In fact, we teach a negotiation course, but at the end of the day, I want my sales manager to be somebody who understands the power of negotiation. I mentioned big picture oriented. You need to be a team builder. Sales is an individual sport. I get that. Everyone's out after their own numbers, but there's so much power in building a team environment in your sales process, learning from each other, supporting each other. Yes, competing. You want them competitive, absolutely, but you want them working together as a team. And let's get away from micromanagement. If it's at all possible, move to a macro level. And if you have people that can't be supported under a macro management level, then you need to get different people on board. Or you're always going to be limiting on your growth. They got to earn that trust. And that comes back to that, being experienced, being able to relate, and just being somebody who's a good leader. But earn that trust. And then strategy. We talked a lot about strategy at the beginning of this, and that's a critical piece. They got to be able to make decisions and move forward. And then hiring is the final piece of this that is so critical. Great managers manage individual strengths. And I'm going to tell a quick story. I know we're running short on time here, but great managers manage an individual strength. I had a person who worked for me in an organization that was seeing a lot of growth. He was working hard. He was making the right calls. He was talking to a lot of the right people, but he wasn't able to close the business. And at first, I came on board to this company, and they said, well, we need to find out how to get this guy to perform more. So I looked at it, the way he was paid. He was underpaid compared to the other reps. And so I said, well, we got to get his pay in alignment. Everybody agreed, and we did, but we didn't see a change in performance. And he was appreciative, but it wasn't really making an impact. And I got to know him a little bit, and I saw potential there, but I wasn't sure why he wasn't closing some of this business. And then I found out one of the things that was really driving him was he felt like he wasn't appreciated in the organization, and it was really affecting him. And he didn't have the confidence that he should have had. And so I started pulling him into meetings, and I'd call on him and say, hey, John, tell us about that situation with that company you were working with in Chicago. And he would, all of a sudden, he felt really appreciated. He felt like he was getting pulled into conversations that made him feel like the company was behind him. I saw a huge change in his performance. And he had a company that he was working with that was not giving him the business that he wanted, and he kept calling on them, and it wasn't going where he wanted it to. And I said, look, it's 105 degrees there right now. I said, why don't we find someone who can send them some gourmet ice cream? And so he found somebody who could send these people some gourmet ice cream. They were so appreciative. They called him right up, thanked him, invited him to come meet with them when he'd never been able to get in the door before. And all of a sudden, this just created this change in him that I saw. He saw this little light bulb go off. He felt really important in the company. He felt like he mattered. And then all of a sudden, he started thinking much more strategically, much more about the big picture of how to build relationships. And he got away from just the idea of just pushing his wares, pushing his sales, but building relationships. And overnight, he transformed. He went from being somebody who was borderline out the door to being our number 2 salesperson in the company. And we were acquired by a much larger organization, and he rose up to the number 2 salesperson in that organization as well. So getting to know your people's strengths on an individual level is critical. Okay, so let's talk about the real opportunity quickly here. When it comes to team development, I think there's certain areas that you want to strengthen them, the areas that you want to focus. But I love this quote by Zig Ziglar. What's worse than training your workers and losing them? Not training them and keeping them. Organizations that train their people has been proven that those people feel more appreciated. There's a lot of mindset around the idea today that, well, you know what, why train them if they're just going to go somewhere else? Because people don't stay in companies the way that they used to. But the people that you train are going to stay longer, and if nothing else, while they're there, they're going to perform better. So clear correlation between sales training and these 7 results. And this is research that was completed by Robert Klein, who was a sales education manager for Nabisco. And this is really great stuff. But he saw this huge correlation where sales were increasing because these people had been trained. They gained more market share. They found this really creative, robust development of products and services internally because everyone was more excited about the direction. Productivity increased across the board, and we're talking about training your salespeople, but it has a trickle-down effect across the organization. everyone felt more important. They felt like the company was behind them. And this was a place where they had felt unappreciated, and it led to much better retention. Customer satisfaction increased. When your people are happier, you think they're not doing a better job of serving their customers and their clients? Of course they are. So customer satisfaction increased. And better yet, net profits increased across the board. And this comes from profiting from learning. Do firms' investments in education and training pay off? American Society for Training and Development. So firms that invested $1,500 per employee in training compared with those that spent $125 experienced an average of 24% higher gross profit margins and 218% higher revenue per employee. So in the Aon survey, respondents ranked opportunities for personal growth as the main reason they took their current job and stayed in that job. Significantly, they ranked it ahead of salary. And according to a study by Lewis Harris and Associates for Interim Services, Inc., companies that fail to train their employees are more than 3 times as likely to lose them. So, I mean, obviously it's pretty clear that training makes a big impact. It impacts the level of influence over buying decisions. So when I think of areas I want you to focus on your training, what about follow-up? How are they following up? And I'm not talking about just sending an email. I mean, what are they saying in that email? Are they doing anything creative? Are they doing anything to make a lasting impression? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about here. There's several strategies. I have this one-pager that I created. It's got a little marketing blurb at the bottom, and I paste a little Starbucks gift card on there, and it says, when you peel it off, it says, "Thanks a latte from Actus Sales Intelligence." But then I write a handwritten note in there, and that's the kind of stuff that makes a huge impact when I'm following up with someone. What kind of questions are you asking, and how are those questions being leveraged? Networking skills and strategies, those are so critical when it comes to team development. And how are you getting them to be self-motivated, and what other motivation tactics are you implementing? And then I want you to get very good at selling on value instead of price. Price sometimes is too big a determining factor when at the end of the day, it's the value you want to be relayed in that message that matters. So I want to thank you so much for attending. Well, we did go over by a couple of minutes. Doesn't look like we've got any questions, but I thank you so much for being a part of this. My contact information is on this final slide here. So feel free to reach out to me directly at paul@actussales.com. And my phone number's on there as well. But I appreciate you very much attending, and I thank Bright Talk for the opportunity today. So hopefully this was beneficial, and thank you so much for being a part of this.